I joined Akash in 9th standard. So I joined early. I gave ANTHE in 8th standard. Pretty much a game-changing moment for me. Now I'm competing all across India.
Hello everyone, good evening and welcome to your very own 9th and 10th channel. I'm Aishwarya and how's the Josh? Because as a part of Jeet Ka Josh series, we are going to be starting off with the chapter Improvement in Food Resources. And today, because this chapter is quite a huge chapter, we will specifically be talking about how improvement in crop yields takes place. Yes, I can see that a lot of you are here already and the Josh is pretty high, right? How's the Josh? Yes, everyone. Alright, I can see Sneha is here, Shivansh, Gaurav, I can see Chitra, Ridhiman, Shifa, Priyadarshini, alright, Master X, Vaishnavi, yes, Aradhya, Bhumika, Shakti, Punya, I see a lot of you are here already. Josh is super high, yes, very good, very good. Alright, good evening everybody. So very quickly, I hope that you have your notebooks and pen with you, or in case if you don't have that, even if you have your NCERT textbook open, completely fine. I want you to make sure that you're making a note of all the important pointers that we are going to be discussing, right? Yes, the first session, especially for biology grade 9, right? Yes, this is going to be the first session for improvement in food resources. We are going to be doing this in 2 parts, okay? Because this chapter is really long and even 2 hours will not be enough to complete it. So we've just bifurcated it into 2. Today we'll be learning about improvement in crop yields and then later on we'll be looking at animal husbandry. Yes? Alright, very good everybody, very good. So now of course what I would want all of you to tell me very quickly is I hope my audio, my video and my screen and what I am writing on my screen is visible to all of you. Is it visible everyone? Very quickly give me a thumbs up on the chat. So today I will try to take this class for about 1.5 hours, right? Because after this, of course, there's going to be a class with Ankita Ma'am and Saurabh sir. So I'll try to wind this up by 6 o'clock. Yes? Very good, very good. And I hope that all of you have asked your friends as well to join, right? Because this class is going to be really helpful for everybody. Yes, very good. Yes, I will wait for a minute so that you get everything ready with you, right? Alright, okay. No problem, no problem. This is going to be a session for grade 9 students. Thank you everyone. Thank you for letting me know I am good to go. And yes, I'm very excited here, very happy, right? So now of course everyone, I'm sure that you would be hearing about Parent Club, right? Now Parent Club is going to be a small gathering and a webinar which is going to be hosted by Chetna Ma'am and even Ankita Ma'am is going to be there. And we're going to be discussing about how every parent is a teacher. Because now, of course, with the digital age, because of how your academics are going, and of course, all of you are in a very, very important space, right? You're in your 9th, you're moving into 10th. It's important your parents get involved in your academics, in your, especially your academic life, I would say. Which is why this webinar will really come handy for a lot of you. So it's happening tomorrow, which is on World Teachers Day. So please do not forget to register. It's there in the description box. It's happening at 12 p.m. Right? So I hope that all of you have registered, and if you've already registered, well and good, please be there. Okay? Poverty as a challenge chapter, soon. It'll be coming soon. Alright? Now, of course, we have ANTHE as well, which is the Akash National Talent Hunt exam, right? And of course, you know that this registration is again absolutely free. We have the ANTHE prep going on. Mock test is going to be solved today at 6 p.m. So do not forget to register because it's happening in November, right? So I hope that all of you have registered for this. Yes? Now, I understand that a lot of you are new to the class, right? And I'm Aishwarya, and of course, I'll be teaching you biology, yes? And along with Ankita Ma'am, right? And of course, today we are going to be looking at improvement in food resources. Yes, all right, biology and human welfare. Okay, all right. So this, of course, is a chapter, if I remember, it's there in 11th and 12th, right? Yes, AV is new. All right, everybody. Are we ready to get started? All of you are telling me, ma'am, already registered for ANTHE. Very good. Start the session. Yes. Now, I saw that some of you are asking me, ma'am, why no smart board? Why are you here with this kind of a thing? So, the reason is for this particular chapter, we needed a lot of writing, right? So, this was easier, right? Which is why we're not going up ahead with smart board. But later on, as and when the chapter comes, we will be moving into smart board. Okay, don't worry. All right, everybody. All right. So today in our class, we are going to be discussing about 4 major things. Yes. So we're going to be first understanding about why we need improvement in food resources. Because of course, you all can be honest with me, okay? How many of you think, ma'am, improvement is a very boring chapter, right? I mean, there's just a lot to remember, so much to learn about. And what is there? I mean, cell and tissue was very interesting, but now when we're learning improvement, it's not that much, right? How many of you feel this way? Any of you who feel that? I know some of them here and there will feel it. Yes. I can see Gaurav is telling me. Yashoda saying no. Very good, very good. Oh, I like the fact that some of you are saying no. Oh, bio is love. Very good. Yes, no ma'am, this chapter is interesting. For those of you who are saying, ma'am, it's interesting, I'm very proud of all of you, right? Some of you who may think this way, because I do know some students will feel like, ma'am, is it really that interesting? Now, for those of you who are agreeing with me, very good, you are all going to be with me, right? And you will be helping me out with this. Which is why we'll first understand why we need to learn a chapter like improvement in food resources. Because this is a chapter which has a lot of practical applications, right? In the real world, it has a lot of practical applications. We're going to be picking up some scenarios that we see in and around us and we're going to try to understand, okay? Then of course, we'll go into these 3 things in detail. That is crop variety improvement, crop production improvement, and crop protection improvement, all right? So these are the things that we are going to be covering today. Now, of course, before I directly tell you why we need to improve, some of you, of course, for those of you who read the newspapers, here and there we would see some articles that are there, right? So let me just quickly change. Yes. So sometimes we see some articles like this, no, which says that the drought situation is very serious. There are districts all over the world wherein we see that at least 18 out of 20 people have been affected, right? How many of you have read such articles? Or maybe seen some images where we see farmers and we see that a lot of crops are getting affected, right? Yes. Or they say that there is scarcity alerts, where in so many different parts there is water scarcity and it is affecting the crops, right? Yes, during Corona time. Yes, very good. Lot of you are saying me. Now, Abdullah, I know you are asking me to speak in Hindi along with Sahej. So, one thing, mainly when I teach, right, I'm more comfortable in English, right? Here and there, I may use some Hindi words. I will try my best, right? But I'm more comfortable in English. So, please do bear with me, everybody. I will be teaching in English, okay? Yes, hello, Leela. Hello. So, now, of course, if you look at it, right? In this case, we see so many news articles about it. Now, at the same time, right, what you would also see, right, is that there will be some newspapers which says that, ma'am, you know what, scientists have identified some drought resistance in plants. Or they say that, you know what, they have discovered some genetic basis for pest resistance in BT cotton. Now, of course, a lot of you may say that, you know, ma'am, these are just some news. Why should we worry about it? That's because you see all of this directly or indirectly is relevant to all of it, right? Because at the end of the day, if you see, we are all of this revolves around food. And I don't need to tell you, no, why food is important. You will all tell me, right, why food is important very quickly. Why should we talk about food, cotton, or, you know, in general talk about these plants? How is all of this relevant to us and why should we study, right? It gives energy. Very good, right? It's very simple. Food is the fuel that drives us. Yes, it will enhance. Yes, very good. Jeene ke liye. Very good. To survive, right? We need it. It is our basic need. Very good. So this is why we need food. And all of this, the good and the bad that we are reading about is, of course, all related to food. Now, of course, in your previous grade, in 8th grade, you had a chapter which is crop production and management, and you would have learned about what is agriculture, right? So, a quick recall of it, because we need to know this forms our basis, right? And I always tell you, if your basics are strong, the rest of it is easy. So, very quickly, we know, right, that large-scale production of food that we eat is simply defined as agriculture. Or if I have to make it a little more, elaborate, right? Agriculture can be defined as the branch of science. For those of you who might ask me for the definition, branch of science that deals with the large scale production of crops and livestock. Now, livestock are nothing but the animals that we domesticate and that we grow at a large scale, right? Or what we cultivate at a large scale. Now, of course, all of you know what are crops, right? Crops are nothing but the same kind of plants that are grown in a same piece of land in a larger thing, right? So this is very simple and easy because see, terms like agriculture, crops, livestock, we are going to be using it interchangeably throughout the class. So this forms your basics, okay? Are we clear, everyone? I can see some conversations happening, but are we clear? Yes, very good, Epic. Animal husbandry and cattle that is there. Please repeat the statement. See, agriculture that is there is nothing but a branch of science that deals with large-scale production of crops and livestock. Yes? It's not a mentee, this is a class, right? Crystal clear, very good. Very good, everybody, very good. So we know about this, right? Now, of course, when we talk about agriculture and we're talking about improving the food resources, now we know that they're going hand in hand, right? Because improving food resources is dependent on what you do in agriculture. And our country, being our country, is said to be an agricultural country. Simply because over 70% of our population is dependent on agriculture. Whether we see that a lot of them are farmers or they may be directly or indirectly included. Yes? Now, one thing you need to understand, because I've still not arrived at why we need improvement, right? I'm telling so many other things, but you're also wondering, ma'am, why? Why is this improvement coming into the picture? So this part I want you to focus, okay? Because apart from our country being around an agricultural country, we also see that it is the second most populous country. That means that it has the second most highest population all over the world, right? So this is important that you understand. Now earlier in the days when the population was not as much as it is right now, right? We see that there say this much amount of land was there and so much amount of people. If they do agriculture here, they were producing enough amount of food for everybody. So there was surplus food, lot of food was there. But what happened was over time, when the population started to increase, as the land started to increase, did the land become very big? Yes? I know there's a lot of disturbance on the chat and I want all of you to be focused here, right? For those of you, Abdullah, if it's not in the syllabus, you can still learn. It's always extra. It's good to know that you are to learn extra, right? Has the land increased? No, land is still the same, right? Land is fixed. Very good. So here if you see, land is fixed, which means that now more number of people are there. But now what's happening is land is same, which means amount of food that is being produced is more or less the same. Yes, very good. Now let me quickly I want to take a minute here. Abdullah, what I would want you to do is that if you have a request for a specific chapter, please drop it in the comment section, right? Parth as well, drop it in the comment section. We are coming up with reproduction chapter for grade 10. It's coming on Friday. So do not worry. Let's focus on the class that is happening. Everybody, very quickly, I want all of you to tell me that we are going to focus on the class and we'll not digress, right? It's important and I want all of you to give me a thumbs up. Yes? Yes, all right, Parth. For those of you who have requests, please drop it in the comments. We always tell you, right? But it's important that you pay attention to the class. Yes? Okay, good. Very good, kids. Very, very good. Yes, I am proud of all of you, but I also don't want, this kind of conversation happening, right? That's why I took a moment here to talk. Very good, very good. Yes. And see, when I'm teaching, I might be teaching, but if you have doubts, I'm going to pause every now and then and you can ask me your doubts. So please don't tell me that, ma'am, you're not looking at my chat. I'm just probably teaching, but when I will take doubts, you can ask me and I will clear all your doubts. That's my promise, okay? Thank you. Very good, very good. Yes. Coming back to the class, right? So like I was telling you, in the earlier days, the population was not so much. But later on, a few years later, the population started to increase and the land is more or less fixed. So which is why what has happened now is there is an increase in demand for food, right? There is an increase in the demand for food. So what did we do? How did we tackle this demand? Because we can't be like, oh sorry, only so much land is there, so I will give you food but I will not give you food. You can't do that, right? So we had to come up with some better techniques. So what we did initially was we did find a few techniques, right, wherein we increased the demand, like we considerably increased the production of all that food. So in my land, if I was only growing 3 crops, over time people came up with techniques where I was able to grow maybe 100 crops. That is a considerable increase, right? Almost like a revolution. Which is why the first thing that we tried out doing was increase in food production. So you would have heard about some revolutions like the green revolution, right? Or maybe you would have heard about the blue revolution or even the white revolution. So green revolution is where we started producing large scale cereal crops, right? So large amount of cereal or food grains we produced. Yes, very good. Blue revolution was when we increased the production of fishes. Yes, very good. While on the other hand, white is the increased production of milk. Yes, well done, well done. Now, of course, we did this. Very good. There was yellow revolution as well. Wonderful, wonderful. So many kinds of things where we increased the large scale production. But what happened was, this is not very ideal. You know why? Because although we increased the production of all this food, we were over exhausting our resources, right? Like water, or it could be, the soil nutrients that are there. We were overusing them a lot. And now we know, right, what is the impact of overusing? Yes, it has led to a lot of detrimental factors. Yes, very good. It degrades the quality, it degrades the soil fertility. Yes. So what happened was, in this case, because we were overusing all of this, they decided that, hey, you know what, we also need to have sustainable practices. Now, this term sustainable that is there is very, very important. Because sustainability in the future holds a lot of value, all right? So sustainable is when you are using all the resources wisely. You are not over exploiting anything, you are not causing any pollution, but you are being wise about it. But sustainable practices, on the other hand, is also sometimes pretty expensive. So it should not be that I'm doing sustainable practices. Yes, I'm doing all of this, but I'm spending so much money. Then how am I going to make profit as a farmer? I am spending 10,000 rupees, but I'm selling my crop for 5 rupees. I am not going to make profit, no? I'm not making any profit. Which is why it is also important that people are able to buy the food that I am growing, right? It should be important that at the end of the day, they are able to purchase. I invest whatever money I'm investing, they are also able to purchase. Yes, there is so much loss, right? So it's very important that food security is there. Which is why, now you've understood, no, why we need to learn this chapter. Even though we are finding solutions to the food security and in the agricultural field, you understand and realize that even now we don't have a permanent fixed solution. It is very ongoing. And there is a need, right? There is a need to find ways in which we can increase the yield of crops and livestock. Yes? So if you understand why we need to learn this chapter, the rest of the chapter becomes very simple. I'm telling you. It's a very easy chapter. Yes, very good. Yellow revolution. Yes, wonderful, wonderful everyone. All right. So now, of course, we have learned so much. Are we clear with the need of why improvement is necessary? Yes, wonderful, wonderful. All right, everybody, let's focus on the class, right? We need to focus on the class. Yes, very good, Bhumika, very good. All right, we are clear with this part. Now, when we talk about crops, because like I told you in our class today, we are going to be talking mainly about crop yield, right? And how to improve this crop yield, yes? Now, in this case, we know that crops that we grow in our country in itself, they are of wide varieties. So can you quickly give me some examples of crops that we grow? Can you tell me in the chat? Okay. For those of you who still have doubts, please hold on for 5 more minutes. I will explain it once again. Okay. I'll just finish this part. Yes, very good, very good. This should be an easy one. No, I can see a lot of you are telling me wheat, you have rice. All right. Then I can see that there is paddy. Okay, paddy is also rice only. Bajra, okay, alright, a lot of you are telling me. Bajra, barley. Then we also have some pulses, no? We have pulses that are there. We have green gram, yes? Alright. Very good, very good. Beans are there, jowar is there, okay. Lentils, ragi, so many. And along with this, we also see that we need fruits and vegetables also, right? We have fruits, we have vegetables. Okay, a lot of you have given me a lot of interesting answers. So these are all the different kinds of crops that are being grown. Now, each crop that is there will not have the same thing. It's not like one crop is the same, all crops are the same. No, different crops have different demands, right? So some crops will require one kind of soil type. Some of them will require extensive light to grow. Some of them require different climatic conditions, right? Maybe the topography or the lay of the land is also something that they depend on, and how much water. Right? Which is why we see that broadly they can be categorized into Rabi crops, Kharif crops, and we also have Zaid crops. And this is based on the seasonality. So Kharif crops that are there are nothing but crops which are sown in monsoon season. Rabi crops are nothing but those which are sown in winter season. Zaid is during the summer season that is there, right? And we've learnt about this. No, this is very simple and easy. So despite all of these conditions, you see, if I want to improve my crop yield, and a lot of you are asking me, ma'am, what is yield, right? I can see this question very consistently on the chat. What is crop yield? Yield is nothing but how many plants that you end up getting. So if I sow 10 seeds, how many plants are actually growing into crops, right? Per unit area. So if I take one square like this, I put 10 seeds, how many am I getting at the end of it? That is what I mean by yield. Okay, are we clear with what is yield? Are we clear? Yes, okay. So are we clear so far? How do we identify as a plant is pulse or legume or none? See, if it is legume, no, it will have a structure like this. The legume name comes from how they appear. It will look something like this. So if you look at beans, peas, they are all called as legumes because they appear to be something like this. So you can differentiate between these two. Exact definition of yield. Yield is nothing but how many crops you get or how much crop is harvested. So let me just write that down. How much crop is harvested per unit area. Are we clear? This is what we mean by yield. Exact definition, I've written it on screen. Are we clear, everyone? See, for those of you who are asking me what is legume, ma'am, what is, what is it, like for example, for legumes and all of it, I'm going to be discussing it later on in the chapter as well. I'd request you to hold on a little bit so that I can go ahead. Otherwise, it will, it might be a little bit of a disconnect. Very good amount of crops harvested per unit area or how much crops. Very good, very good. Yes. So now if you see here, we've understood that there are different kinds of crops which are there, right? And all of them have different demands. Now for those of you who are asking me, ma'am, what is Zaid crop, right? Zaid crops are those crops which are sown between Kharif and Rabi season. So between March to May, they are sown and grown, okay? So if you think about it, your pumpkins, your cucumbers, they are all considered to be Zaid crops, right? Yes. So these are all the different kinds of crops that are growing and all of them have different demands. Which is why we need to have strategies that will help us work around it, right? What kind of crops they are. Which is why we see that improvement in crop production and management can happen in 3 strategies or 3 ways. Crop variety improvement, crop production improvement, and crop protection improvement. Alright? So before I go ahead, all of you have a lot of doubts, right? So I want you to ask me this right now because if I get started with this, I may go on and on for some more time. So please. Okay, what is Zaid crops? Zaid crops are nothing but those crops which are sown between the monsoon season and the between Kharif and Rabi seasons. So normally we see that it is sown between March to May. They are also called as summer crops, okay? Yes, any more doubts everyone? Any more doubts? Are we clear? What are fodder crops? Fodder crops are those crops which we normally give as fodder for cattle. You cattle like cows, they have a certain kind of, material that they eat, right? Or a certain kind of food that they eat. Though that is what we call as fodder. What is yellow revolution? So green revolution that is there is mainly for your crops that is there. No, so for your grains, especially rice and wheat, they are for your grains, right? Yes. What are crops? Crops are nothing but plants which are grown at a large scale in a piece of land. What is hybridization? I am just about to teach it, okay? Yes, I am just about to teach hybridization. So please wait on for 5 more minutes, alright? Alright, okay. Any more doubts? Yes? Or shall I move ahead? Can I move ahead, everybody? AV, I know you're asking me about yellow revolution. Can I please teach it towards the end if you don't mind? Okay, I'm going to do it towards the end. Alright, everybody. Very good. No doubts. Please proceed. Okay. So now, of course, we are first going to be discussing about crop variety improvement, right? I'm also seeing that a lot of you are asking me, ma'am, please do some fun. I think it will come, okay, but I want you all to focus in class. All right. Actually, Saurabh sir was going to come in the beginning of the class, but he had to go. What are pulses? Pulses are nothing but grains, or they are seeds which have good protein content in them, or they are rich in proteins. Alright, so they are rich sources of proteins. Very good. Dal and all of them are examples of the same. Yes. Now we're going to move on to a very important topic. See, I need 20 minutes of your time for this topic because most of your questions in your exam come from crop variety improvement, okay? And if you're sorted with crop variety improvement, I'm telling you this part of it is very simple and easy, right? So you just need to focus on crop variety improvement. So what do we mean by this term variety? Alright? So it's important that you understand what is variety. So I'll give you an example, okay? We are all humans, right? I'm a human, you are all humans here, yes? And if you think about it scientifically, because we are all science students, we see that humans are, the scientific name is Homo sapiens, okay? So we all belong to the same community that is there. But do you and me look the same? No, right? Even at home, if you think about it, you look very different from your family members, right? You guys don't look the same. Yes, there are slight differences. Yes, very good. Variety means different. Very good, Chitra. Very good. I can see Varshita, Aman, all of you have told me the answers. Very good. So there are different categories that are there. Yes. So in this case, we see that even though we belong to the same species, we are different, or there are slight differences. So more or less, this is what we mean by variety that is there. Even in the same species that is there is what we call as variety, right? Now, in this, I want you to understand two other terminologies. So I'm constantly telling you the term species also, okay? So what do we mean by species? Species are nothing but organisms that are of the same kind, okay? They are of the same kind, and if they come together, they will be able to produce or reproduce basically to give fertile offsprings. So if Homo sapiens, so if you think about it, nothing but very simple example. If you have tiger, you have Panthera tigris, right? You have a tiger. And if a tiger and a tiger will cross, right, and it will give you a baby tiger, this tiger should also be able to reproduce. This is what we mean by species. Now I'm setting some context here because you guys don't have the chapter diversity in living organisms, and this becomes very easy to learn if you know diversity, which is why I'm just setting some context, okay? This is what we mean by species. They are very closely related, okay? So species, very simply put, are closely related. While on the other hand, if you think about it, we have something known as genus, okay? So genus is just one level above where similarities are slightly less. They are not very similar. More or less, they have good number of similarities, but more number of differences, okay? So you need to understand this. Are we clear? Are we clear about what is genus, what is species, and what is variety? Right? Because later on when you're looking at plant variety improvement or crop variety improvement, you need to understand these three things. Yes, nomenclature. Very good. Yes, explain genus, right? So genus is nothing but a layer or a taxonomical hierarchy, like how a lot of you are telling me. Or if I want to make it a little more easy, no, genus is nothing but where you have a group of organisms, all right, wherein we see that they have more differences when compared to your species level. Okay, very simple and easy. I know you will learn about it in your 11th grade, but when you suddenly see it in your 11th grade, it shouldn't be that you are getting little scared. Ankita ma'am is coming on Friday to teach the chapter part. Yes. All right. So now we know what is plant variety improvement. So for a definition for all of you who want it, it's on screen. You can take a screenshot. It is precisely defined as a group of plants selected within a species, or basically it's nothing but a group of plants that are there, right? And we see that they have maximum number of similarities which are there. Yes? All right. Now, variety is something you need to understand. But why are we talking about this, ma'am? Why should we learn about improving the variety, right? What is the whole point behind this? Because you see, apart from the fact that the world has problems with food security, farmers also face problems, okay? We see that sometimes farmers end up growing crops which have not enough nutritional value in them. Then what is the whole point of eating the crops? Because you see that, crops don't have enough nutrition. Sometimes the crops are not grown properly, right? Because of lack of nutrients in them, or maybe due to multiple factors. Crops are malnourished and they look very weak. And you see, sometimes all these vegetables, they'll be looking very brittle. It looks very sad. I don't know how else to describe this. Sometimes they look very sad, like they look very weak and brittle. Yes? And in some cases, poor plants are getting attacked by insects and pests. Pests are nothing but unwanted, animals that are feeding on it. And sometimes at the end of the day, when the harvest has come, they have low quality seeds, right? So in all of these cases, farmers are also facing problems, which is why they thought that, okay, first what we are going to do is we will then make sure that we will figure out a way where we help the farmers grow good quality crops. And these crops should have certain characteristics. So for example, these crops should have the ability to give me high yield, which means that if I'm growing my crops, they must be growing in large number, right? They must be able to grow in large numbers, right? And we know that we also want improved quality. I don't want some, just because more in number is there, it should not be that quality is not there. Quality should also be there. It should be having a biotic and abiotic resistance. What is biotic? Biotic is living, which means if some pests are harming, they should be able to withstand it. If it is abiotic, they should also be able to survive some harmful, like maybe some strong winds or something like that. They must be able to do it, right? And of course, it must have wider adaptability. It must be able to survive in whatever condition I'm growing it in. If there's not enough water, you should survive. If there's not enough light, my plant should still be able to survive, right? And along with that, change in maturity duration. So I also want to grow crops which I'm able to grow fast, right? I want all these things. So it's not something that a plant is going to do. No, plant is not a genie saying, okay, Aishwarya, you want all this, I will grant you the wish, right? Plant is not a genie. Plant is a living organism. Which is why we need to be able to implement some techniques, right? So these techniques by which if I implement them, I will be able to get all of this or most of it, I would say. And these two techniques are hybridization and of course genetic modification. Yes. So you need to understand why we are learning about this hybridization and genetic modification. Okay. All right. I will come later to teach, okay Parth? But let's focus on what we are discussing today, okay? Let's focus on this particular thing. I can see some of you are asking me, ma'am, what is desirable agronomic characters? So like I told you, I was telling you about fodder crops that are there, no? So we have fodder crops which are there. Now fodder that is there is for the crops and there are some desirable characteristics, for example, like tallness is preferred or maybe dwarfness is preferred for something, right? So we see that these are some desirable agronomic. It's preferable for growth and agriculture as well, right? So that is what we are going to be focusing on. Are we clear, everybody? Heredity chapter, Ankita ma'am will be teaching very soon. We'll come very soon. Okay. All right. So now we're going to look at what is hybridization first. A lot of you are demanding, ma'am, tell me about hybridization. So we will think about hybridization. Okay. So we're going to start with a very simple example. Like I told you, I want a plant which is able to do everything. If I want this, I want my plant to have it, right? Or if I want my plant to survive in extreme condition, I want my plant to do that also. So let's assume I have 2 plants in my neighborhood, okay? So I have 2 plots, all right? I saw that there is one crop or one plant which is pretty good, okay? It is able to survive in drought condition, which means that if I don't give it enough water also, this plant is able to survive. But sadly, these seeds are small. So they're producing small seeds. And small seeds is not something that I want. But I'm like, okay, nature is giving me such a good plant, might as well, make the most out of it, right? But at the same time, I noticed that there are large seeds that are there, right? So I see that there's another plant. So I see there is plant 1 which is having this, and I see that there is plant 2, okay? And we see that this plant 2 that is there is having large seeds. Now this is something I was looking for. I want large seeds, no? But sadly, this cannot survive in a drought. If little water also goes, this plant will die. Okay, so it's a very high maintenance plant. On the other side, it is a low maintenance plant. Even little water you give, it will be able to survive. Okay. Now, of course, what if I could take this characteristic? That is, I want drought tolerance from this plant and I want large seeds from this plant. I mix it together, maybe like some ingenious scientist or maybe like, Professor X from Powerpuff Girls, if you've ever watched it. Put all the sugar, spice, everything nice, and then I get what I want. So if I bring all of this together, right? What if I was able to do it and get a new plant or a new variety of plant where it is drought tolerant, which I was looking for, and large seeds, which again I was looking for, right? Yes, Bhumika, I'm getting a profitable plant. I'm getting something that I want at the end of the day. It is desirable, right? So what do I mean by desirable? Some characteristics that I am looking for. I am desired. I'm liking these characters and I want them in my plant, right? Yes, very good. Mixing the good characteristics or diamond creations, preferably desired characteristics is the right word. So this whole crossing over that I am doing is what we call as hybridization. Yes, Epic, you were asking me. So the crossing of genetically dissimilar plants, right? Like I told you, here we're looking at plant 1 and 2. They're not the same. They are, of course, even though they may be of same species or if they're of the same genus, they'll have some slight differences that are there, no? So we see that when I cross these 2 over, I see that this crossing over of genetically dissimilar plants is what I call as hybridization. Alright? Yes, okay, use white ink. Fine, I will use white ink. It will have contrast. Is it healthy for humans? It is. As a matter of fact, a lot of food that we eat, right? We see that it is hybrid varieties and we're going to learn about it. Is there genetics involved? Genetics is involved, right? So in this case, I'll tell you, plant hybridization that we're going to be discussing about is not involving a lot of lab work, right? Farmers tend to do it and we do it artificially, okay? So we're doing this artificially by doing selective breeding, which means that I'll take 2 plants, I'll, artificially cross-pollinate it, which means I'll take the pollen grains, put it on top. There are various things that you do. But it's happening over time, right? So this is important. I know someone will ask me, how is crossing happening? Yes, Epic, I'll tell you. So I'll take pollen grains from this plant. I'll take the female reproductive part of the pistil in this plant. I'll artificially cross-pollinate. Okay, that means I am the one doing all of this. And over time, I will keep repeating this process until I get this. So it is not that today I decide I want this and this, I'll get it. I have to work for it for a long period of time. Yes, it requires a lot of time, it does. This particular thing, artificial selective breeding, the material or the process that I told you, takes a lot of time. It's not something that you do overnight. Is it expensive? See, if you think about it, because you'll have to do it for generations, it's slightly expensive, but not compared to maybe what we're going to discuss next, that is genetic modification. Yes, high-yielding varieties. Yes, HYV, high-yielding variety seeds are hybrid seeds that are there. Yes. Is there any substitute? I am going to discuss, I'll be discussing it. Class will be ending at 6 o'clock. Yes. All right. Okay. High-yielding varieties and hybridization are more or less related because you get those seeds, right? You get those hybrid varieties, right? So you need to understand what is hybridization as a process. Now, high-yielding seeds can also be genetically modified also. Okay, crystal clear. Now we'll move on. So we know what is hybridization, no? That means I'm crossing two genetically dissimilar ones. Now I can do it at 3 levels. The 3 levels we discussed: genus, species, variety. Okay? So if I'm going to discuss at a variety level, we call it as intervarietal ones that are there, right? Yes. Very good. Some farmers cut the branches, right? So they also use techniques like grafting, like how Vaishnavi is telling. Very good, very good. So I missed that out. Thank you, Vaishnavi, for reminding. Sometimes they also do grafting, and for 10th graders, you will learn about it. So what happens is that they will graft it like this, and they also get a hybrid variety that is there. Now we see that in intervarietal hybridization, we cross 2 varieties of the same species. Alright. So here if you have wheat, you know that wheat is also called as triticum. So for those of you who will ask me, and I know someone will be there who will ask me, it's called aestivum. Okay, this is a scientific name. Now this triticum aestivum will also have various types. Okay, there will be various different kinds of varieties which will be there. And when you take 2 varieties of it and you cross it, you will get another variety of wheat. And normally in the market, if you think about it, it's called as Kalyan Sona. You would have heard about it. No, some wheats have all these names that are there. So we call it as Kalyan Sona, which is an example. So this is an example of intervarietal hybridization. Okay, and at the end of the day, we get good quality wheat. Intent is that we get good quality. Okay, that is the main intent. Now next is at a species level. So from variety of the same species but different varieties, we've moved up. So 2 different species will come together. And I'll tell you the most common example. How many of you have heard of this? Don't look at the example on screen first. How many of you have heard of tomato? I'm sure most of you would have heard about it. Yes? Yes, all right. Quickly, can you tell me? No, I can say no and yes on the chat. I'm surprised. Yes, no, all right. Okay, some of you have not heard about it. Some of you have heard about it. Okay. So for those of you who are asking me, right, tomato that is there is a cross between potato and tomato. Alright, so potato and tomato, when they're crossed together, you get something known as pomato. But see, pomato is not something that is, good, right? So if it was something good, we'd be eating tomatoes. But they've tried to cross it, alright? So in this case, if you see, the scientific name of potato is Solanum. Wait, let me just quickly write this down. It is called as Solanum tuberosum. While tomato, on the other hand, is called as Solanum lycopersicum. Alright, persicum, sorry. So this is what we mean by potato and tomato. Now notice in this how the genus name is the same but species is different. This is what we mean by interspecific. 2 different species of the same genus are coming together. Alright. Now another example that is there is Tangelo. Tangelo here is of Duncan grapefruit and orange, which will give us Tangelo. And we see that this has a very good sweet, sour taste, right? The right kind of tangy that we want. And we also see that in this particular case, it's also rich in vitamin C, right? Yes. Why? If it is not good, why did scientists cross it? They were curious, right? They were very curious to know what will happen if I take tomato and potato. So yes, friends, I'll repeat once again. Interspecific hybridization that is there is when we take 2 species of the same genus. That means they belong to a bigger genus but species wise they are different. Okay. And when you bring them together and you hybridize it, it will give you a different kind of species or a crop variety. In this case, if you take grapefruit or Duncan grapefruit and orange, you get Tangelo. Right? Do we have to memorize scientific names? No, you don't need to. This is just for your understanding. You need to only remember 1 or 2 examples. Scientific names are not important to remember at this point. Okay? Yes, tiger plus lion is liger. Yes. Does the taste get changed? Taste gets changed more or less. Okay, so we see here that in this case, when you talk about it, no, like for example, it gets improved. The whole point of it is to improve the taste. So in this case, here and there, it will get changed a little. Alright? Yes. So now the last one is intergeneric, okay? So when you take two different genuses, so if I have two different genuses and I cross it, I will get an intergeneric hybridization. So you have some wheat varieties which are crossed of this intergeneric ones that are there. And we also see that in floriculture, no, especially when you are talking about large scale production of ornamental flowers, no? So in the case of ornamental flowers, we see here that especially in orchids, to get good variety orchids, we go ahead and we do intergeneric hybridization, right? So this is all about it. Now what are the advantages? Very easy. We are able to get a better plant. So I'm able to hybridize. I'm able to get a better plant which is having all my desired characteristics. I want this. Yes, I can put it. I'm able to do this. Yes, I'm able to do this also. Right? So in this case, if you think about it, I'm able to achieve all of this. And along with that, I'm able to get disease-resistant plants, high-yielding varieties that are there, right? And I'm also able to make sure that I'm able to, if in case, right? I'm seeing that some organisms are unnecessarily growing, I'm able to also control all of it. So hybridization in general is a very good thing for us, right? And something we are practicing. Is it comparatively easy to hybridize inter-variety? It is actually. It is easy to get inter-variety. And to an extent even inter-specific also. In the case of rice also, right? You have Sona Masuri rice that I'm sure you would have heard of. Or in case if you've not heard of it, you can ask your parents also. Sona Masuri rice is something that we buy. And it's actually an inter-specific cross that is there. Intergeneric not so much. So preferably it's variety and then inter-specific. What is the difference between all three? The kind of crosses you take. In inter-variety, right, it is same genus and species, different variety. In interspecific, same genus but different species, right? And in intergeneric, both genus and species are different. Are we clear? Are we clear, everybody? Varshita, I have explained the difference as well. All right, okay. So now we'll move on quickly to a question, everyone. This is a very simple one. Tangelo is an example of dash hybridization. Can you quickly tell me in the chat? Okay, everybody says crystal clear. So from here, I'm telling you, if you understand this concept, the rest of it becomes easy. Sankalp, if you have doubts, please do tell me. You're saying no. Example of intervarietal or interspecific. What did we do? Or intergeneric or interfamily. Interfamily we didn't learn, so we can eliminate, right? Yes, very good. It's an example of interspecific, right? Interspecific hybridization because we took two different species and we crossed it, okay? Very good, everybody, very good. Now, as much as hybridization is good for us, we are able to get, plants with desired varieties, right? I'm able to get whatever I want. But at the end of the day, there are not so much, advantages. Because like I told you, when I was explaining it, it's a very long-term process. It takes a lot of time, okay? And along with that, you're not very sure if you get it. Because I am doing the breeding, right? I am taking pollen, I am doing this, I'm doing it artificially. It may or may not happen. Or I might end up getting two very different things, right? So the results are very uncertain. So what if I want something which is certain? That is when we go to the next one, which is genetic modification, where in the lab, we are able to carry out certain, experiments, or we are treating it in such a way that I am able to modify it. Yes? What is sterile? If it cannot reproduce, right? If it is not able to reproduce further, that is what we mean by sterile. It cannot reproduce. Yes, spermato is an uncertain result. Very, very good. So now let's understand what do we mean by genetic modification, again with an example. And if I tell you with an example, I'm telling you this becomes very simple. You all know what this is, no? What is behind me? Very easy. Yes? What is there right behind me? All right, yes. Abdullah, I would want you to focus on the class because I understand you are a little worried about some other chapters. But stay focused. It will be very easy, I promise you. And I'll help you all throughout the way, okay? Brinjal or eggplant. Very good. Very, very good. This right here is a brinjal, right? Now what happens is that brinjal that are there normally, right? They get eaten by some insects or they're easily damaged. But what scientists realized was that there's some bacteria. Okay, you imagine it's a different organism altogether. They found this bacteria known as Bacillus thuringiensis. Let me just write that again, right? So we see that there is a bacteria which is known as Bacillus thuringiensis, which was producing a particular toxin that could kill the same insects or pests that were attacking the brinjal. And they realized, they're like, okay, if this bacteria is doing this, what if I take this particular gene, right? Or what if I take this particular part of the DNA, right, which we call as the gene, and I take this and I put it inside my plant so that my plant is also producing the toxin. And what they saw is that this particular plant now, this particular brinjal was now resistant to the pest, right? They were able to resist the pest and the pests were dying on eating them. And the best part was that if an individual consumed the same thing, this particular toxin did not affect our body. So what has happened here essentially? I have modified the genetic material. I have taken something else, inserted it, or maybe I could delete it. So in this case, I'm saying that I have modified it. And this is what we call as genetic modification. So what is genetic modification? When I add a desirable gene into the genetic material of a crop and modify the genetic material. Then we get a genetically modified organism. Okay? So we get a genetically modified organism. So your examples are BT cotton, BT brinjal and golden rice, right? So in golden rice, it's not the same as what we discussed. In golden rice, you bring two different things together so that you get more amount of vitamin A in it. It's harmful for humans, right? See, again, a lot of the GMOs that are there, right? There's a lot of testing still going on, right? Which is why we see that it is sometimes not, it's not, again, beneficial for our body. There's a lot of controversy around it. BT here stands for the bacteria's name, Bacillus thuringiensis, which is why we put the short form BT. Okay? Can we put this bacteria in all plants? No, we'll not be able to do that. This is specific to a certain kind of pests, so it'll only be helpful. Pros and cons, right? Pros are of course that you get pest resistant plants. Cons is the fact that is it ethically right? Is it good for us to consume? Is it safe? Those are still in question. But in the primitive tests that were done, they assumed that it would be safe for us. Can you spell the bacteria's name? I have written it here. I'm just going to show it to you once again. This is the spelling of the bacteria's name. Bacillus thuringiensis, okay? So basically in genetic modification, what you do is you will have the genetic material, no? And what you do is this genetic material of the crop or the plant, what you will do is you will modify it in your own way, okay? You will manipulate it, yes. You will modify it in such a way that I get what I want. So in this case, if I want pest resistance, I can modify it in this way. Or if I want something else, I will be able to do that as well. So this is what we mean by genetic modification. So in two ways we are able to improve it, right? Either by hybridization or we'll be able to do it by genetic modification. Are we clear, everybody? Yes, a lot of you are already telling me, ma'am, crystal clear. See, this right here, I'm telling you, if you understand this part, because most of your questions come from this particular concept. They'll ask you to explain hybridization, right? Or they'll ask you to give examples, right? Or they may ask you to talk about GMO. Yes, GMO food that is there. The examples I gave you is of GMO food, right? You get this. And if you know this, the rest of it is very simple, I'm telling you. That's why I took my time to explain this particular part, all right? Okay. So now we've understood all about crop variety. Okay, now let's assume I've got good variety food. Okay, yes, my food is, I have high variety plants, right? So my crop is drought resistant, pest resistant, whatever resistance you want to put, my plant is able to get all of it, right? So I'm able to get all of that. But that alone is not enough, no? Because at the end of the day, I have to grow my plant. If I'm not able to grow my plant, am I going to get anything? No, right? So how I grow my plant or crop production that is there is very, very important. I can see some questions coming in. If we bring good quality genes of different organisms and put it together, would that have a good result? I'm going to go back because it's a very good question. See, when we talk about genes, right? we know that even if genes are just present in the DNA, not necessarily that they will do its function. So imagine I have a gene and I've put it. But this gene should express itself. The gene should say, okay, this protein has to be produced, this toxin has to be produced, right? So in this case, it has to express itself, which is why we see that it's not always that if you put the genes, you will have success. There's not 100% success guaranteed, which is why people are still doing testing on it. But genetic modification is something that they are looking into, okay? So are we clear with this? Because I thought that was a very interesting question to tackle. Yes, all right. Okay, are we clear, everybody? You're not facing any lag, no, in the chat? Yes. How do we take out genes from organisms? It's a very complicated process. Normally happens in the lab. You isolate the genetic material, then you treat it. There's a lot of it that is there. What is sterile? Sterile means it cannot reproduce, okay? What is molybdenum? Molybdenum is a nutrient that is there. Yes, Fatima, very quickly before I go ahead. We have only half an hour, maximum 45 minutes. Yes, Mona Lisa, I've answered. Sterile means it cannot reproduce. Yes, Fatima, please ask me. Please ask me. Yes, thank you. What is hybridization? Okay, I'm going to write the definition. When two genetically dissimilar organisms are crossed to get maybe a high yielding variety, or you can say to get a hybrid plant is what we call as hybridization. Yes. What does express mean? To produce proteins. All right, don't worry, you'll learn about this later. Gene might get, yes, there are chances. See, at multiple stages of it, there are chances that it can get damaged. Okay, can you explain this once again? See, when we do genetic modification, right, we have various genes. Okay, but now imagine if you take one gene from my body and you decide to put it in plants, right? For that gene to do its function, okay, maybe for example hair color, or just think about anything, for that gene to do its function, it should be able to do it in that environment, right? It's in a different organism, it is in a different, environment altogether. So when you do this modification, it may or may not do its function. That's what I mean by express. For a gene to express itself or to carry out its function, it's a may or may not kind of thing, right? So that's why it's important that you understand that you cannot just directly place genes. There are multiple factors. Sometimes if you do this, it could be bad for the plant. The plant will not be able to survive. Because you see, our body has mechanisms by which it will detect, oh, this is good for my body, or no, this is bad. So there are multiple layers of it, right? Yes, an example of sterile. See, I cannot give you in plants, but I can give you in animals, okay? So when you cross, I'm sure you would have all heard of mules, right? When you cross a horse and a donkey. So if you cross a horse and a donkey, you will get a mule, okay? Now this mule that is there cannot reproduce. It is sterile. So this right here is an example of a sterile organism. Yes? Z crops are those crops which are nothing but crops which are sown between March to your April-May season. Example being pumpkin. Okay? Yes, very good, very good. Crops grown in summer. Very good. All right, everybody, I'm going to pick up the pace in teaching because we have only around half an hour left, right? And class is also going to be there. So let's focus on what is happening. So genus is nothing but a layer, or I would say a category, wherein we see that there are organisms which have a lot of similarities, but they still have differences when compared to maybe, at a species level. What is mule? When horse and donkey are crossed, you get mule, okay? All right, let's focus on, we have a lot more, we have two more things to cover. We have crop production management and protection, right? As much as I want to discuss this, we'll move this conversation maybe towards the end, all the other doubts that you have, okay? So now, like I told you, as much as you want to do crop variety improvement, you might get desired crops, you will have crops which are really good, okay? You will be like, oh, they have all my desired qualities. But unless and until you do proper crop production, like when you are producing your crops or you're growing your crops, if you are not doing proper practices, you see that it will still not be useful. And not everybody is at the same place, right? We see that here we have two farmers. We have farmer A and we have farmer B. Now farmer A here looks different from farmer B, right? Because in farmer A has a lot of equipment, he has a lot more land, he has a lot of people who are helping him out, right? But farmer B here, when compared to farmer A, might have relatively less money to invest in this, right? Or maybe financially he's not very well off when compared to farmer A. So if I give the same kind of seeds for farmer A and B, they will not be able to grow it in the same way, right? Farmer A is able to maybe grow it with high cost, he's able to put money and he knows he'll get a return. But farmer B does not have that much money to invest, which is why managing your resources is very, very important based on how much money that you have. So at the end of the day, when you are growing your crops, after you have your desired crops, it's important that you get high yield, but make sure that you don't invest too much money also. Low costs and low maintenance, right? So based on money that is getting invested also, we see that we will be able to divide it. Yes, there is surplus production in farmer A. Yes, and it is called as sustainable development. Very good, very good. So this is what we mean by it. Now I told you that when we talk about crop production management, we are talking about, making sure that you manage your resources. So what are these resources that we are talking about? The nutrient resources, the irrigation and the water that we are putting, and of course the cropping patterns. Yes, the intent is to get less effort and more profit at the end of the day. Very good, Gaurav. Very, very good. Yes? Are we clear? So first up, let's talk about nutrient management. Now this part of it is something that we are very familiar with, right? Because when we talk about nutrients, we know that nutrients are nothing but some important components. They are the food for the plants, right? So we see that these are the food for the plants, and most often than not, we find it in the soil, right? But the thing is, nutrients don't just come from soil. Nutrients can come from the air, it can come from the water also, right? So we see here that carbon and oxygen, of course, comes from the air. We have water, which comes from, you have water which has hydrogen and oxygen in it, right? And along with that, we also see that there are some dissolved minerals which are essential. Yes? Now, soil has your maximum amount of nutrients. We see that some of these nutrients are required in large quantities, which we call as macronutrients, while some are required in micro quantities. Now, it cannot be that farmer is like, okay, I am going to sow my seed in the soil. It is high yielding, high variety, everything is there, and he lets it be. Because soil may or may not have the right amount of nutrients. And at the end of the day, it's kind of like telling, I am a bodybuilder, I have muscles, I can, lift heavy weights. But if you're not going to give me food, I will not be able to do my work, right? At the end of the day, I also need it, right? So it's important that we provide it with the food. Yes? So just think of it. This analogy will always make it easy for you to understand why nutrients are needed. And at the same time, imagine we are 10 bodybuilders, but you keep only feeding one bodybuilder. Then the others are not. So unequal distribution is also there, right? So it's important that nutrients are distributed properly. Now, how can we do this? So in case if soil does not have enough nutrients in it, we can provide it to the soil. Now, providing is where we know manure, we know fertilizers. These are not very new things to us. Now, manure, of course, is something that we get organically, which means that it is derived from the organic matter of solid animal and plant waste, right? So we get it when these plant and animal waste undergo decomposition, where we see that they are broken down into simpler substances. And when it is added to the soil, there are multiple benefits. We see that it helps in increasing the water holding capacity. So soil is able to retain more water, which is necessary for absorption. It makes the soil porous. Porous means there will be fine openings in the soil, wherein again water can be filled, right? It increases how many microbes are there, and of course improves soil texture. We know about manure, right? It's very simple and easy. Now, of course, manure can be of various types, right? Yes, I was waiting for this question. Just now I was going to tell that. Difference between manure and compost, right? I am sure that this is a very popularly wondered question that is there. What is compost and manure? See, manure can even be your animal excreta, right? So cow dung is a very common example of manure, and I'm sure all of you would have heard about it, right? Cow dung is a very common example. If you take cow dung as it is, and in some places they add it as it is to the soil, and it provides good amount of nutrients. Yes? But compost will mainly include your degrading matter, which means it also includes your soil waste, that it includes your plant waste as well, right? Yes. Compost may have synthetic material. Sometimes we add things to enhance the process of composting, right? Yes. Now, of course, we can do another kind of it, which is vermicomposting. So for this process of breakdown of substances, we can add earthworms, right? And these earthworms fasten the process, or they hasten. Hasten is nothing but to fasten the process basically. And we call this as vermicompost. So essentially what happens is that these earthworms, they'll feed on it, okay? So they'll feed in all these organic matter, they'll break it down inside their body, and they will excrete it out. And this earthworm excreta that is there is actually very rich in nutrients, which is why this movement of earthworms will loosen the soil that is there and also improve the soil fertility. Right? So this right here is what we mean by vermicompost, when your earthworms are involved. And yes, Vaishnavi, I will be sending it. Do not worry. Alright? Then of course, we also have green manure. So green manure is when you're using certain crops like hemp or guar, right? And you maybe treat it with decomposition and then you plow it into the field. We call it as green manure. Okay? Where can we get worms? Worms are normally found in soil, right? Yes. So that air can get into the soil. Very, very good. So this is all about manure and we've learnt about it. But the thing is, manure, because it is organic in nature, lacks some essential nutrients. You will not be able to understand how much of what nutrient is present. Whether it's your nitrogen, whether it's your phosphorus or magnesium, whatever, you will not be able to understand how much of it you are going to use, right? Or how much of it is already there. Which is why there's a preference on fertilizers. Now, fertilizers are synthetically produced, which means that they are manufactured in companies. And here we see that it's made up of chemical substances. Now, of course, fertilizers will have a fixed proportion, right? That means that you know how much of nitrogen you will find, how much of, maybe phosphorus, how much of potassium, right? So, you will have it in right amounts. And the advantage of having fertilizers is that they will improve because you have a fixed amount of nutrients in them, no? So in a short-term goal, they will improve the yield, right? So they'll be able to improve the yield. And of course, unlike manure, it's easy to store and it's a quick solution to get increased yield. But fertilizers, being chemicals that they are, they'll reduce soil fertility, they'll cause water pollution, and of course, they are injurious to health as well. Which is why people prefer to have manure over fertilizers. Now, I'm sure that a lot of you would have heard about this, right? How many of you have heard about organic food? How many of you have heard about this? Yes, very good. So, for doubts, I can see Bhumika is asking me some doubts and I was seeing that there were doubts asked throughout. Just give me 2 more minutes and I'll clarify all of your doubts, okay? We'll go into the doubt board section and we'll clarify it. Yes, a lot of you have heard about it. You all have heard about what is this. Very good. So, organic food actually comes from practicing organic farming, right? So, what do we do in organic farming? We don't use a lot of chemicals, right? Or we use minimal amount of chemicals. But we make sure that we get maximum output, right? So that we make sure that more of organic manure is there so that we are being eco-friendly. So the intent of this particular organic farming is to make sure that we use more eco-friendly materials, whether it is in terms of nutrients, it's whether in terms of protection, right? We do all of it in this manner, making sure that we have healthy cropping systems. Yes. So very quickly, everybody, we've discussed on how to manage nutrients. We can either be adding manure, we can add fertilizers, or we can practice organic farming. Any doubts? Because I did see that a lot of you were asking me questions and I know some of you must be thinking, oh ma'am, you're not answering. But yes, I was just teaching this part so that I can get to this point and I can help it. Please explain green manure once again. See, green manure is when you use certain crops, right? For example, if you use sun hemp that is there. So when you directly add it to the soil, we see that it improves the fertility, right? Which is what we mean by green manure. Guar is a kind of plant that is there. How can we cannot continue the existence of mules, Shritama, that's the thing. Because they're not able to reproduce, we're not able to continue the existence, and there is no way in which we cannot continue it. How is fertilizers injurious to health, and why do people use it? See, fertilizers are chemicals which are either sprayed on in the plant, right? Or we see that what happens is they are added to the soil. Now, if they're sprayed on in the plant, we see that we are consuming chemicals. Now, it's not that if you spray little or maybe it has certain chemicals and we consume it, at one go it affects us. But over time, these chemicals can affect our inner body, right? It will accumulate and it can affect us. And at times, it can be harmful because it can lead to some detrimental effects like cancer. So, it's important to understand. What do we mean by fixed proportion? Which means that if I have a fertilizer like NPK, okay, I know that I'm making my fertilizer with X amount of nitrogen, Y amount of phosphorus, and Z amount of potassium. That means I know exactly how much I am adding. That is what we mean by it. What is eradicated weeds? Weeds that are removed, eradicated out. That is what we mean by it. So we should not use maximum amount of fertilizer. Yes, you should not be using maximum amount of fertilizer. How does manure improve soil texture? So when you add manure to it, it makes sure that it sort of improves the water holding capacity, right? And we also know that soil texture is very important for the crops and the roots to grow. So how does it improve? It technically adds on to the texture basically. Ma'am, is potash also harmful when used? Overusage of anything is bad, right? So it's important to understand. Yes, can I tell about the revolution towards the end? I'm really running short of time. We have only 20 more minutes and quite a bit to cover. NPK. NPK stands for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Can you explain the difference between compost and manure? See, manure that is there can also mainly include your animal feces, right? So even animal feces here is considered to be manure. So if I take cow dung and I add it to the soil, it's considered to be manure. Compost mainly includes your decomposition, which means it also includes your plants as well, right? Your plant debris, or I would say, you know, the vegetable peels and all of that is there. So mainly compost will include both. Manure could either be this or it could be that. I mean, the plant debris that is there. Yes. Vermicompost is when I use an earthworm and I decompose it, because manure is formed by the decomposition of organic matter, right? So when I'm able to decompose it, when it is done with the help of an earthworm, we call it as vermicomposting. Yes, vermicompost is what we get at the end of vermicomposting. Yes, very good. Ash is good for increasing soil fertility. They say that because, you know, when you add it normally, because at the end of the day, it's broken down, right? Yes, all right. Are we clear, everybody? Are we clear? Yes, okay. So I will move on to the next one because we have quite a bit still to discuss, okay? All right. So now moving on, right? So we see here that we have 4 options and you need to tell me which among the following cannot be used to make manure. Is it plant straws, cow dung, kitchen waste, or plastic sacks, right? Yes, all right, very quickly. This is a very easy one. Because manure, as we know, is organic, right? It is organic. In some places they use it, Rafiq. In some places they do. Yes, very good, very good. Very simple and easy. This is plastic sacks, right? Yes, all right. Because you know plastic is a non-biodegradable one, right? So if it is non-biodegradable, we know that it will not be decomposed and it is not organic in nature, which is why in this case we see that they are plastic sacks. Now we'll move on to the next one, which is irrigation. Irrigation is very simple and easy, okay? Now we know that irrigation is nothing but the regular supply or the supply of water at regular intervals. Now I'm sure a lot of you must be wondering, right, ma'am? Why should we worry about water? Water is a natural resource, right? We make sure that we get it, we are always getting water. It is there in the pipe, it is there in, the tanks that are there. So why should we be concerned about crop production management? And in production, why are we talking about the water? Now the reason being is the fact that there are situations when there is not enough water. Now, if you remember in the beginning of the class, we looked at drought, right? So we saw that there were various parts which were affected by drought. And drought is when there's not enough water and it leads to water scarcity, right? So in this case, if there is a water scarcity, farmers should be prepared. No, oh my God, suddenly it should not be that one day I wake up and I realize, oh no, I have no water to grow my plants. It shouldn't be like that. I must be prepared that in case tomorrow there is a slight shortage of water, I am still able to plant, right? So it's important that we don't wake up. Planning is the key for large scale production, okay? This is very, very important. Now, of course, we know that there are various sources of irrigation in India. Primarily being rainfall, because in India, if you see, it's a monsoon country, right? A lot of monsoon seasons are there, rainfall is there. We have then rivers, canals, ponds, tube wells and wells, yes? Very good, Varshita, very good. Like drip irrigation, yes. So these are all some wise choices that we can make. Yes. Can we all focus on the class, everybody? Yes, can I have your focus and attention? Very good, very good. We have drip irrigation system and sprinkler irrigation system. Yes, wonderful. All right, wonderful, everybody, wonderful. Yes, focusing, thank you. So now, of course, we see that in most places, right, whether it's wells, we know that for wells what we do, we'll drill deep underground, right? So we see that even at home, sometimes when they're digging bore wells, no, they'll be drilling deep into the water and they'll be digging it. So this is how we use wells. And even farmers do the same thing. They dig out wells wherein they're able to take the groundwater, or what they will do is they will attach one pump to it so that water can be taken out and supplied to the crops, right? Or in some cases, they will build canals wherein they will reroute. So if this is a river, they'll reroute it or they'll build a canal such that some of the water will come to their farmlands, right? Or you have river lift systems, which will again, in some cases, if water supply is not very regular, they will use a river lift system to again get water from the rivers. And tanks again as storage, right? And of course, apart from that, we have some modern methods like drip irrigation or sprinkler, wherein either in the case of drip irrigation, we see that a motor will be connected maybe to a tank or a canal or a well, and pipes will go throughout. In the case of, it will go all the way till the tips of the roots and provide it water drop by drop, right? So canal is when there's, like, what do you say, when there's a river, right? You reroute it, you put a small stream so that it will go to where your field is. Yes? River lift system, it's very simple, okay? In the case of river lift system, sometimes when water is not regular, so this is when it is irregular, or it's not properly provided, like in cases when it's insufficient. We take it from the river, we find ways, or we use pumps or channels through which we are able to take it directly from the river, okay? That is what we mean by river lift, literally lift water from the river, yes? Can we use drip irrigation for any crop? See, again, like I tell you, right, if your land is uneven, you cannot use drip irrigation. You will have to use sprinkler irrigation, which is more beneficial because it's able to cover a larger land. So a lot of factors matter in terms of what kind of irrigation goes into it, okay? Are we clear with this? It's very simple and easy, okay? Irrigation, why we need it and how you need to plan. Okay, is dam an example? Yes, the reservoirs of the dam can be an example. Yes. All right. Last but not the least, we have cropping patterns that are there. So now we have looked at managing our nutrients. We have looked at managing our water resources, right? Now we've done all of this. But if I still don't sow my seeds properly, if I don't have a pattern, right? So what do we mean by cropping irrigation that is there, right? So if I'm not able to grow my crops properly, I said cropping irrigation, but if I'm not able to grow my crops properly, then there is no point of me doing all the other things that we have discussed so far, okay? So it's important that you understand. We use drip irrigation in all crops. Again, like I told you, if it is uneven land, we prefer to have sprinkler, okay? Not in uneven lands. Yes. So now very quickly, what do we mean by cropping pattern? Very literally, if you go, the pattern in which you grow your crops, right? How you decide to grow your crops. It shouldn't be that I have one land and I'm randomly, putting crops here and there. So it's important that you grow it in a certain way, right? Either like this or like this. I need to have a certain layout in which I grow it. That is what we mean by cropping pattern. So we see that cropping patterns must be implemented for better outcomes. So to manage my nutrients, to manage my water resources, I should also be having proper ways of cropping it so that my plants are able to utilize it better. That is what we mean by cropping patterns, okay? So first up, we have mixed cropping that is there. Now mixed cropping that is there is when we grow 2 or more crops simultaneously. So if I have one piece of land, so I have one crop which is growing like this. Oops, I used black. Okay, let me use blue. So I have one crop which is growing here and maybe another crop which is randomly growing in between or maybe here or maybe in some other corner. So I'm growing 2 crops simultaneously on the same piece of land, right? Now why am I doing this mixed cropping? Why can't I just grow one single crop? Again, to make most of my resources. Now I should grow a crop in such a way that I'm able to grow 2 crops wherein one crops will utilize maybe some kind of resources or it will use some nutrients. The other leftover nutrients that are there will get utilized by the second crop. So it's important that we mixed crop or we do this mixed cropping such that we make it efficient. So for efficient utilization of nutrients, of water, we use mixed cropping. Now these are of course some examples that are there, which is wheat and gram. We can grow wheat and gram together, wheat and mustard, or groundnut and sunflower. Okay, so this is important that you understand this. Now another example that is there of course is again coffee and areca nut. Alright, and there are various conditions, or I would say various not conditions I'd say, but rather various factors that are considered while doing mixed cropping. I cannot just take rice and wheat and then decide to, do mixed cropping. There are various things that they take into consideration. For example, they make sure that the height of the plant matches. They make sure that how extensive their roots are. Because it should not be a competition at the end of the day. They both must be able to grow very well in the same piece of land, right? So that is what we mean by mixed cropping. Now next up we have intercropping. Now in intercropping that is there, we see that there are 2 or more crops which are grown on the same field in a definite pattern. See the terminology, it is definite pattern. Now in this case they are sown like this. So if I have one crop here, then I'll have another crop here. So it is in rows or it could be like in wide columns like this, I could do it. But the pattern in which I'm doing it is very important. Now earlier when I was discussing mixed cropping, I did not specify a pattern. Because in mixed cropping, you can do it however you want to. But here, the pattern in which you do it is very, very important. So ginger and cabbage is a very common example of intercropping. And again, we see that. The reason why we do intercropping is because of optimal usage of all resources. That is why we do this. Alright. So this is intercropping and this is mixed cropping. Now last but not the least, if you see, we have crop rotation. Now crop rotation is growing crops or growing different kinds of crops alternatively in a pre-planned manner on the same piece of land. Right? So if in one season I decide to grow soybean, the next season I will grow the corn that is there. So it is important that we understand that we do crop rotation alternatively. It is a pre-planned kind of cropping that you do. And we specifically prefer to take the leguminous plants that are there, right? And why do we take leguminous plants? Because in their root nodules, they have the rhizobium that is there, which will improve the soil quality, which is why we normally do this. Yes, now I can see that a lot of doubts are coming on the chat. So very quickly, can I take it? Because I do know that normally when I'm teaching, I look at the chat, but I don't answer the doubts at that point, right? Yes, all right. Harvesting for mixed cropping. So again, their harvest time is also planned in such a way. See, in all cases, whether it is mixed cropping, right? So in mixed cropping or in the case of intercropping, crops are chosen in such a way that it will not clash. Okay, that is what is important to understand. Okay, what are legumes? Legumes are nothing but plants that are there, right? So we see that there are certain kinds of plants wherein in their root nodules they have certain bacteria. And these bacteria are called as rhizobium. And these rhizobium that are there have the ability to fix atmospheric nitrogen into soluble nitrogen. And here in this case, what we observe is that they improve the soil fertility and they improve how much nitrogen is present. Yes? Example, multiple cropping is when you grow multiple plants that are there. Very simple. Okay? Mixed cropping may have two. Multiple is when you grow more. Okay? Drip irrigation is beneficial in mountainous region. I am not very sure of the answer, so I will not be answering that question. But what you can do is you can put your doubts in the comment section and I can answer that. Okay. I also saw one more question. Example of Z crop. Pumpkin, cucumber is an example of Z crop. Okay. Yes. Are we clear with this? I have written the answers. Are we clear with the different kinds of cropping patterns that are there? Yes, everyone. Watermelon is also another example. Very good, very good. Pumpkin, watermelon, cucumbers, they're all very easy examples. All right, so I'm going to take 5 more minutes. So let me just quickly do this. All right. Okay, everybody, can I take 5 extra more minutes for the next one? Yes? I'm asking because land is sliding, not uneven. Exactly. But again, no, when you are going to be laying out the land, right? It's very difficult. Yes, I can. Okay, thank you so much. So I'm going to take 5 extra more minutes till 6:05 and I'm going to quickly tell you the last part, which is very simple. Okay, it's the simplest of them all. But before I go ahead, we have a question. Which among the following is not a cropping pattern? Intercropping, mixed cropping, crop production, or of course crop rotation, right? Which among the following is not a cropping pattern? Very good, everybody. Very, very good. The correct answer is crop production. So crop production management includes managing your resources, right? And in cropping patterns, we have these 3, okay? Very, very good. Very proud of all of you. Now the last part of it is protection. I have got my high yielding varieties. I have decided to follow proper practices, making sure I'm growing it properly. I'm, making sure that I'm using my nutrients wisely. Yes, I'm doing all of it. But at the end of the day, I need to also protect it. Because throughout today's class, we've been discussing about how there are pests and insects, right? And sometimes these pests and insects can come and harm our crops, which is why it's important also to have proper and appropriate practices to get rid of these pests and insects. Now, apart from that, we also see that at times there are undesirable crops, right? So we see that there are some undesirable crops which grow along with your main crops. I will not say undesirable crops, but I call them as undesirable plants. And these undesirable plants are your weeds, right? So they compete with your crops for light, for nutrients. And despite you doing everything, if these weeds also start to grow, it becomes very, very tough. And we see that, Parthenium and Xanthium species are all examples of weeds. Which is why, yes, we need to get rid of these weeds, right? And weeding is the process by which we remove these weeds, or we call them as weeding. So weeding is the process of removal of weeds. Very good. Now, normally we see that in order to get rid of the weeds, we can either spray weedicides, right? So we can spray weedicides like 2,4-D, which will get rid of those unwanted plants that are there. And in the case of pests and insects also, we can spray pesticides and insecticides, and what will happen? We'll get rid of all of that as well. But the thing is, in both these cases, it's not very, eco-friendly. Because again, we are depending on other, chemicals. Which is why normally for weeds, what we do is we normally pluck it up, or we, do it manually, right? Or in some cases, what happens is that for pests and insects, we can use biological agents. Okay. Now, what do I mean by biological control agents, or BCA? Now, pests that are there are nothing but insects, no? Which means that there are some unwanted insects or animals. So in some cases, what if you see, we see that some of them that are there are eaten by other animals or other insects maybe. So what we can do is we can add some agents that can, get rid of these pests naturally. Thereby, we are not disturbing the ecological balance, right? So this is very simple and easy to understand. So this is a ecological, I'll not say ecological, but an eco-friendly way of getting rid of it. If I said ecological earlier, I'm sorry, okay? I meant eco-friendly, that's all. And apart from this, we also see that storage that is there is a huge issue. Because not following proper storage practices can, at the end of the day, you imagine, I have done all my improvement, I've done production, I've taken care of it, I've got harvest, I have got plenty of it, then I don't store it properly. If I don't store it properly, what will happen? No use, right? All this is going to get damaged. And most often than not, we see that pests again can come and affect your harvested grains, moisture can affect it, we see that some microorganisms can grow, which is why while storing you need to make sure that we sun dry it, proper storage techniques are done, we store it at a large scale in silos and granaries, very good, and of course adding neems that are there, right, or making sure that we get rid of it. So storage also plays a very important role when it comes to your production practices. So with this, if you see, we come to the end. I told you the last part is very simple. Now a lot of you are asking me, ma'am, should I remember names like xanthium, parthenium? One example will be good, okay? One example is good to know. So are we clear, everybody? Any more doubts? Any doubts that you have so far? How do weeds grow? See, they also start off. So what happens is that normally, when you have maybe some crops that are there and we see that maybe some seeds would have fallen. So you have birds, maybe they are spreading some seeds or some insects are spreading it. They come through various ways, okay? But once they come on the soil, right, it's very ideal for them to grow. So then they start growing. So they normally spread in that manner. Yes, this chapter is not finished. Like I told you, this is one of two. See, for the first part only I took so long, no? So for the second part also I'll take quite some time. But it's important that you understood this part. See, this part is where you get a lot of questions from. And now you know they're all interrelated to one another. So it's very simple and easy. Yes? In Hindi, from my next session, I will really work hard on this and I'll try to teach a little bit in Hindi. But like I told you, I'm a little more comfortable in English, which is why I choose to English. Okay? Are we clear, everybody? Very quickly. I have 2 more minutes. Do I have to give examples of micro and macronutrients? Alright, so it's good to remember 1 or 2 examples. Okay? Alright, what are fungicides? Fungicides are those which get rid of unwanted fungi that are there. Yes? Alright, I'm just quickly checking the chat. Alright, okay. So with this, if you see, I think we come to the end. I can see some of you are asking yellow revolution. Yes. So yellow revolution that is there, from what I remember, was a revolution which was done mainly for the oil production. Not petroleum oil, but the oil that we consume, right? That is what we call as yellow revolution. What are pests? Pests are nothing but unwanted, right? So we see that they are unwanted insects or harmful insects that destroy crops. Yes? When will you explain the leftover part? I'll be coming next week and I'll be explaining the leftover part. Blue is for fishes, white is for milk, okay? Alright, So very quickly today we started off with the need for improvement. Then we went on to understanding about crop variety improvement. Yes, where we learned about hybridization and we learned about genetic modification and we learned about genetically modified organisms. Yes, and of course after that we learned about crop production management. Right? And here in detail we learned about three things. We learned about nutrient management, then we learned about irrigation, then after that we also learned about cropping patterns that are there. And last but not the least, we learned about crop protection. Right? So we learned about crop protection and how we can protect and why storage is also important. So very quickly, I have a homework question for all of you. I want you to quickly tell me what is hybridization and what are the three types of hybridization that we see in the comment section below, and I'm going to be checking your answers and I will be replying to them. So do not forget to give your answer in the comment section. All right? So now with this, I come to the end of today's class. Thank you so much for being such a wonderful bunch of students. You asked me a lot of interesting questions. And of course, I hope now this part has become super duper easy. And you know that 9 to 8 has always got you covered. And if you like this video, please do share it with your friends. Stay subscribed to our channel because you know Jeet Ka Josh is going on. Keep that Josh up high and hit that like button to show us your love. Hoping to see you very soon again. Bye bye and have a nice day.